Location plays a very vital role in our day-to-day life. Many of us use maps to find our way from one place to another or often provide directions for others to follow. It is important that children learn to establish a sound knowledge of direction and an understanding of how to use and interpret simple maps. Major concepts involved in location and mapping. Location refers to the aspects of geometry that involve position, arrangement, and direction, and grids and maps. The concept of location begins to develop at a very early stage when children are often asked to follow instructions such as keep the books on top of the table, don't stand next to the door, or don't play behind the car. As they continue to build on an understanding of location, they also slowly begin to understand concepts of direction, distance, and position that are closely associated with it. Students constantly become aware of new words that relate to position, such as clockwise, anti-clockwise, forwards, backwards, up, down, around, behind, above, over, top, bottom, middle, end, north, south, east, west, find, past, in front of, beside, turn left, turn right, go past, horizontal, vertical, next to, diagonal, opposite, center, etc. As they gradually develop this vocabulary, they also come to realize that direction and distance could be connected to it. For example, the teacher instructs, stand next to Peter. The student begins to think and ask questions to himself, how far next to Peter, which side, left or right next to him, and tries to find the answer. This forms the basis of giving and following directions from one place to another and also develop an understanding of direction and distance. As they grow older, students using the knowledge of location try to understand the concept of mapping. The development of mapping skills is progressive as they are taught more about what is a map, what are the different kinds of map, why are they used, etc. The student also tries to find out what information they get from maps and why key features such as legend, landmarks, symbols are often used in maps, encouraging them to determine which type of map is to be used in different scenarios, such as going from house to a different country is a world map, and going from the school to the airport, a road map is used, etc., helps them to explore and interpret simple maps. The concept of grids in mapping can also be introduced to students through the game of battleships, for example, in which students set up a grid that uses a system of letters and numbers to describe a particular point or position in the grid. The knowledge of grids and mapping also helps students in other aspects of mathematics, such as graphing and also data presentation. Realistic context. Though there are different concepts involved in location and mapping, teaching this conceptual focus area is often challenging and should be made engaging and entertaining for students. During the last week of my first placement, the grade 1s and 2s that I was working with were introduced to the topic of mapping and location. The students really enjoyed and were deeply engaged to the different activities that were carefully planned and carried out in the classroom. As a warm-up activity, the children played a very interesting game called Little Soldiers, which basically involves listening to the instruction and doing the correct action. The teacher shouts the instruction, to which students immediately correspond in action, and the last person to do the action was counted out. The game continued until there was a winner. Some of the instructions and the actions that were used were salute left, which means turn to the left and salute. Face front, face the teacher with hands by the sides, etc. I thought it was a wonderful activity to refresh position vocabulary and also to follow and correspond to instruction. The kids also had good fun and loved it. As a part of the major activity for the week, the children were introduced to an activity called Build a City. The learning intention was how to design a city using grid paper. The activity involved the whole class and many ideas were discussed before the activity, such as what is the top view or a bird's eye view, how do some objects look from the front view and the top view, what's different, what's same, etc. There were also some pictures of bird's eye view maps shown to children, which highlighted different features that they could see, example buildings, parks, roads, ovals, etc. The students then were asked to begin designing a bird's eye view of their own city on a piece of grid paper, and then encouraged that the ideas they come up with common things will be used to create a big city. The student ideas were supported by providing them shapes to trace around and to make their own buildings, etc. As a part of the extension, students were encouraged to measure their roads with a ruler and use grids to make the roads in a particular length. The students absolutely enjoyed designing their own city or town in a grid paper in the later weeks, which progressed to a real city with boxes and other common things. It was quite fascinating to see how various aspects of mathematics, such as shape and measurement, were also blended into the concept of location. Common student difficulties and misconceptions related to location and mapping. Though children in this modern age are exposed to a wide variety of books, media, and interactive resources, there are many difficulties and misconceptions they face that relate to location and mapping. Difficulties. There are two difficulties I found that students face when learning about this topic. The first one is difficulty in interpretation. Children often find it difficult to correctly interpret words such as above, next to, etc. This is because these words lack a reference point and could be interpreted in many different ways. The second one is confused about orientation. Children also get confused by the position of the viewer and the orientation of the object, because what appears to be on the left of the object for a person viewing it from the front could actually appear to be on the right for the person viewing it from the rear. Misconceptions. The first one that I have chosen for misconceptions related to this topic is misunderstanding representation. One of the major misconceptions related to location and mapping is misunderstanding representation. The idea of representation is something students find it hard to deal with when interpreting or reading a map. It is a skill that children are not born with but develop gradually as they become older. Students usually in the foundation level often misunderstand representations while interpreting maps. For example, understanding that numbered rectangles drawn on the floor are actually physical desks for them to occupy. In a study, some students of the age group 7 and 8 watched one adult paint green dots to represent hiding places in a map and another paint red dots to make a map more colorful. And when they were asked which map helped them to find the hidden fire truck, the students picked up the map with red dots because fire trucks are generally red. This study shows that even early primary students have sometimes trouble understanding a representation while reading maps. Other examples that early primary children often misunderstand or misconceive while reading maps or assuming that a road drawn in red in a map will also be red in real life, or green shaded regions represent a lot of trees, or blue roads are often rivers. Children normally begin to naturally understand the representation of maps as they grow older, but need purposeful instruction to help them really understand the concept of representation. Digital tool teaching activity. Digital tools are very interesting and educative, which have great activities to actively engage kids in a particular subject and area of focus. The digital tool I have chosen for teaching location and mapping is an interactive website called interactivesites.weebly.com that addresses a lot of issues related to maps and direction. This website has interactive activities which are highly informative and extremely fun for kids to learn and understand more about direction, following instructions, and improving their mapping skills. The digital tool also removes a lot of difficulties and misconceptions among students related to this particular topic. I have picked and listed a few of the interactive activities that I found in this website, which I believe will help students understand in depth about position, orientation, and also about reading maps. From the digital tool I have chosen, which is a website called interactivesites.weebly.com, I have chosen three interactive activities that engage the difficulties and misconceptions children normally face related to the topic of location and mapping. The first two activities address the problem of the difficulties they face, and the last one is about the misconception. The first one is about the cardinal directions that will help students to get a better understanding of the direction, position, and movement and help them overcome the difficulty of interpretation. The second digital activity that I have chosen that would help kids with orientation and following instructions is a very thought provocative and practical activity. It is fun at the same time and builds some of the fundamental things related to location. The one that is addresses the misconception, which is misunderstanding representation, teaches the basics of reading a map and also enhancing the children's mapping skills. It also teaches them how to interpret a simple map that involves key features such as legend, symbols, scale, etc. It also helps them to understand the maps better and avoid common misrepresentations.